Welcome to the Brew Crew Review Podcast, the show by fans for fans of your Milwaukee Brewers. Welcome, Brewer fans, to another edition of your Brew Crew Review Milwaukee Brewers podcast. I am your host, Vince Travato. I am joined on the set today by the one and only great man, Mr. Scott Bartell. Scott, how are you today?
I'm doing great. Celebrating another great Brewer win, great Brewer homestand, 6-1 on the homestand. Gotta love it.
Yeah, very, very exciting times to be a Brewers fan. We're, as of this taping, still in first place. The Brewers have just concluded the home half or the home schedule in the first half. One of the better home records in team history. It's a homestand that we just saw against the Atlanta Braves, where we won 3 of 4 from Atlanta, and we swept the Minnesota Twins. So all in all, an outstanding homestand. We are missing 2 of our co-hosts on this very special edition of the Brew Review. Craig Mueller is unable to join us this evening. He is, I believe, DJing a wedding. And Scott, did you talk to our co-host Chad Collins? I know that you were talking with him earlier today. Do you know where he's at?
He actually told me that he was going to be crashing a wedding that one of our friends was DJing. You know what? I just put that together. I didn't know Craig was DJing. Okay, yeah. So I guess he's crashing whatever wedding Craig is DJing tonight. So good luck to both of them.
I mean, I'm sure Chad has other friends, but, I mean, yeah, you're probably – I mean, it could be the same one. You never know. Guessing it's in West Dallas, but who knows. Well, in any event, Brewers fans, we have a very special show for you today, mostly because of the way that this team is playing. Like we just mentioned, a 5-1 homestand is a very exciting thing to leave fans with, as the Brewers are now going to be on the road for the next week. There's then the All-Star break, and the team doesn't come back home. You could have one of your interns double check this, but I believe it's July 20th is when the team comes back to Milwaukee. So 4 days of that is going to be during the All-Star break, but again, a full week schedule on the road next week prior to the All-Star game being played out here in Washington, D.C.
Oh, wow. Are you going to be able to go to that at all? Or?
Yeah, I believe that our press credentials will come through. I should be able to make the All-Star game here in Washington. It's pretty exciting. I will most definitely be at FanFest a couple days next week, and we can bring you some updates via Twitter. Brew Crew Review 1 on Twitter will be active all through next week, and I will bring you guys updates from FanFest, the game, and maybe the Home Run Derby, depending on if I get out there or not. So we'll be able to as much as I possibly can. I have not been to an All-Star game since Milwaukee, actually, in 2002. So it's been a number of years since I've been able to get to an All-Star game. So, yeah, very excited about that. I'm sorry you can't make it out here this week, Scott.
Maybe you can see someone win this time.
And our executive producer, Craig, can put up that image of Bud Selig shrugging his shoulders from the 2002 All-Star game. Scott, let's talk a little bit about the week that just concluded. As mentioned, Brewers had a great homestand, swept the Minnesota Twins 3 out of 3 games, and then 3 out of 4 from the visiting Atlanta Braves, our only trip to Milwaukee this season. Scott, what are your thoughts on the homestand that just concluded, and tell us a couple of the highlights?
Well, I mean, this particular homestand, I actually thought that that Brave series was pretty pivotal. I mean, you think about it, if I don't know, if somebody's able to overtake the Braves in their division, then they could be fighting for a wild card with us. So anytime you're playing that kind of competition, it's really important. And to take 3 out of 4 at home is absolutely perfect. I was a little bit worried about it when we actually have a losing record for day games. And so after we won the first 2 games, a lot of people were joking like, oh boy, well, we're going to finish that 2-2. But we did lose Saturday, but came back and got Sunday's game. And that wound up being pretty awesome. So yeah, great homestand.
Yeah, a couple of great points there, Scott. Number one, we have not won a series against the Atlanta Braves since, I believe, 2013. So that in and of itself was a really nice factor here this week. And then, number two, the other thing that really stuck out to me is the fact that the Braves are not only a a very much a contending team, a very good young ball club. But they also have tremendous starting pitching, and we were able to face, I would say 3 out of their 4 starters that we faced are considered to be very top-notch pitchers in the National League. And oddly enough, the one that we did the worst against was Anibal Sanchez, who would probably be the 4th best of the 4 that we faced.
Yeah, he hasn't pitched that good in 3 years.
Yeah, no, exactly. Have you seen the Brewers play that well in, 3 ball games in 1 series against that level of starting pitching? I mean, granted, it's not the Greg Maddux, John Smoltz, Tom Glavine Braves, but, all 3 of the guys that we faced are pretty outstanding. 3 of the guys that we beat are pretty outstanding pitchers. And the Brewers were able to actually put up not only a decent amount of runs, but have huge innings against some of these guys. What are your thoughts on that, Scott?
I'm trying to think back when something like that would have happened. Maybe the Mets series, I guess, would have been the closest that I could think of off the top of my head.
Yep.
But, they've done a good job with it. And, our pitching keeps us in these games. So it's the type of thing where if we can scrape together a couple of runs, that might just be enough to take it.
Yeah, and that's another great point. Let's reaffirm our observations from throughout the entire first half that, the Brewers starting rotation and bullpen have both been incredible. And we had a couple, hiccups in the bullpen, I would say, the last week, most specifically from Jacob Barnes. But outside of that, you really can't point to any games where the bullpen blew it for us. Even one of Barnes' meltdowns, was not even a meltdown really, but today he gave up a couple runs in the 9th after we were already up 10-1 in the 9th inning, and it just continues. So you've got Josh Hader, who's been resting a lot this past week, but has just been continued to be outstanding. This bullpen just continues to do the job, and I think that our starting rotation deserves a lot more credit than they're getting across the league. I know that we've talked about him on the show several times, but Chassin, again, has just continued to impress me in terms of both his ability to keep the team in the game, but also just to dominate other hitters. He's just done that the entire season outside of maybe 2 or 3 rocky starts. Junior Guerra has stepped up big time this year, and our whole starting room, Chase Anderson, is starting to pitch like an ace like he was last season again, and it just seems like despite injuries and despite not getting much recognition across the National League, the Brewers pitching just continues to do the job.
Yeah, I mean, if you even look all the way to like Brent Suter, I mean, he's obviously, he's our 5th starter. Not sure how much longer he's going to be our 5th starter as the trade deadline approaches. But even him, like the first 2 times through the order, the guy has an ERA of right around 4, maybe a little under 4. And then after that, unfortunately, it balloons up to over 8. And so that's why a lot of times people look at it and say, hey, why is Suter getting the quick hook? Well, that's why. Because when we don't give him a quick hook, he gets blown up. So.
Yeah, and that, again, goes back to the strength of the bullpen, though, being so important because, if Suter can even get us through 5, if we're lucky, 6 innings a couple times through the order, the instant that he gets in trouble, we can then back end that bullpen and fill in for the rest of the game and almost have it out there like that is the plan going into the game. And I think that, Suter deserves a lot of credit for keeping the Brewers in nearly every game that he's pitched this year. That's a great point. And that brings us to the next topic here, Scott. We've had a number of transactions this week. Brent Suter was placed on the disabled list several days ago, so he is going to be out for at least 10 days. He should miss 2 starts because of his being placed on the disabled list and the number of games that the Brewers are playing here the next week. But there are also a number of roster moves today. We're taping this on Sunday after the Brewers win against the Atlanta Braves. Earlier today, the Brewers announced 8 roster moves. Quite a lot for one day, especially for a first place team.
Yeah, but typically for a month.
Exactly. But David Stearns continues to manipulate the roster to what seems to be in the best interest of the team. And to recap that really quick, the Brewers activated Lorenzo Cain from the disabled list today. Good to see him come back. We also called up Nate Orf was called up again. We also called up pitching prospect Corbin Burns today as well.
Yes.
And we also called up catching prospect Jacob Nottingham for the second time this season. Correspondingly, Manny Pena and Ryan Braun were both placed on the disabled list, and Aaron Wilkerson, who pitched just in one game this past week, was sent back down to the minor league, and everybody's favorite reliever, Mike Zagurski, was designated for assignment with his fate yet to be determined, but he is no longer on the big league roster. Scott, what are your impressions of the flurry of roster moves that we woke up to here this morning?
Mike Zagurski. So many memories we'll have. But no, that was quick. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, such a flurry of moves. I actually think it's ridiculous because if you said this at the beginning of the year, you'd say it was crazy. But I think we're going to miss Pena more than we are Ryan Braun, just because we have at this point now we have Thames playing in the outfield regularly along with Kane and Yelich, which is pretty solid outfield. Whereas we really don't have like the amazing defensive cannon arm, Manny the Cannon. We don't have him back there. It's going to be hard to replace him. Nottingham is certainly good and has a little bit more pop in his bat, I'm willing to bet, but he's not going to be able to hose runners like Manny Pena. So he will be missed, especially in those close games. Like, it's so great just to cut down a guy in like the 7th, 8th, or 9th inning that's trying to like be the tying run to get in scoring position and just see Manny Pena rifle him out. I mean, that will be missed.
Yeah, which he did several times this past week, including in one very clutch moment against the Braves, I believe, in Game 1 of the series. But yeah, you're absolutely right, Scott. And who would have guessed? I mean, if you would have talked or asked any Brewers fan, at the beginning of this season, if you would have said, right around the 4th of July, the Brewers are not only in first place, but on the disabled list at that time is Ryan Braun, Zach Davies, Jimmy Nelson, Brent Suter, Manny Pena, Lorenzo Cain until just today. We lost Eric Thames for a good chunk of the season. Tyler Saladino wasn't even on the roster at the beginning of the year, but we lost him for over a month. I mean, this team has just continued to amaze me with their ability to remain in contention with the depth that they have despite a flurry of injuries. And it amazes me some of the big names that have been out. Christian Yelich has missed time. Chase Anderson has been on the disabled list this year as well. It's just incredible. And that's not even at all discussing anybody that we lost from the roster for other reasons, guys like G-Man Choi, who we traded, or guys like Jet Bandy, who are now in AAA, or the fact that our starting shortstop, Orlando Arcia, is in AAA, or our starting right fielder from Oakland Bay, Domingo Santana, is in AAA. I mean, who would have possibly guessed on April 1st that this would be the situation that this organization currently finds itself in? I would be very shocked if anybody would have predicted anything close to this.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't even think at this point that Stearns is like manipulating like everything that he looks at. I look at it and say, wait a second, that seems like a weird move. I don't really get it. And then like 3 weeks later, I just accept it because it's working. And so I don't even know anymore. Like, I mean, I didn't go to Harvard or anything like that, but pretty close CWM, I'd like to think. So I'm not sure must be a little bit of a knowledge gap there. But yeah, no, he's making all the right decisions and everything seems to be working out so well. I can't claim to understand it all the time, but not only that, but he's manipulating the roster by making sure that we always have fresh arms and we're not punting games when the bullpen is fried, because he makes sure the bullpen is never fried. I mean, we just went through that whole series and we didn't even use Josh Hader, so
right, and hardly Corey Knebel, and with all due respect to him, I look at a way that a former general manager, Doug Melvin, looked at roster construction, and I want to start by saying Doug Melvin is a GM who I really liked, and he did a great job for this organization and brought us to the playoffs, twice when we hadn't been there since forever, 1982, prior to his helm. But I view the way that David Stearns looks at this roster and is able to manipulate the roster as being very unique around Major League Baseball, or at least aggressive, especially in that bullpen. And I think that that's made a lot of difference to give some guys some relief. I know several days ago we didn't discuss this move, but Jorge Lopez was called back up, and it was yesterday's game was a game that we were losing. We were probably going to lose. We had dug ourselves a bit of a hole, but by being able to replace Aaron Wilkerson, who was also just called up, with Jorge Lopez, we didn't waste any arms that are going to be necessary for any of the road games that we're going to be playing this upcoming week. And I just think that that's just a brilliant use of the roster, and using the 40-man in its totality and keeping these guys in the game.
Yeah, it's been pretty awesome just seeing. I mean, you feel like if your starting pitcher can give you 5 solid innings, our bullpen's going to get it done. And, I don't know how or why or anything like that. I was actually also thinking – I wanted to go back to this because I want to talk briefly. I don't know if this is a great time for a segue, but
no, it's great. Yeah, it's fine.
We are talking about all the great things that our team has done in spite of everything. And then when you think that our best player, Jesus Aguirre, wasn't even starting for the first 6 weeks of the year. So there's that too. I mean,
incredible. And that does bring us to another segue. Let's talk about the All-Star game that's coming up. We briefly touched on it, but for those of you who are not aware, the Major League Baseball All-Star Game will be played a week from this upcoming Tuesday in Washington, D.C. Just announced tonight within the last hour. We actually waited to tape until we had the confirmation of the selection. 3 Brewers were named as All-Stars this year so far. And that includes Josh Hader, who I think everybody projected to get in, and also 2 of the 3 Brewers outfielders, Christian Yelich and Lorenzo Cain, are both All-Stars here in 2018. I think a lot of prognosticators might have picked one of those guys to get in, but not both, simply because they both come from the same team. But can't really argue with either pick. They're both having great years. The big surprise, of course, is that Jesus Aguirre is not going to be in the All-Star game. Scott, I know you had your intern, Shaniqua, look into a number of Jesus Aguirre's stats in comparison to the rest of the National League, and she tweeted it out earlier. Do you want to talk about a couple of those stats and where he ranks in the NL?
Yeah, I will definitely attempt to do that while trying to look this up really quick because I don't remember off the top of my head. Shaniqua, I thought, nope. Okay, I thought she was going to leave me a memo here with that on it, but she did not, so that's unfortunate. But let's see. I guess I'll try to look it up. Yeah, I don't know. You want to stall it for a little bit for me? We'll talk about how great Jesus Aguirre is.
Well, like you mentioned, Jesus didn't even get regular at bats until the end of April. So he missed essentially, or not missed in the DL sense, but didn't get much playing time until the very end of the month, and thus missed a month of counting stats. And Aguirre had 2 home runs again today. The guy has just been clutch all season. He has obviously solidified himself not only into the Brewers starting lineup, but I think that at this point in the year, and again, we're not quite at the All-Star break, but I really believe that Jesus Aguirre has got to be in the top couple players in discussion for National League MVP. If the season were to end today, here's a guy who is carrying a team on his back in many, many ways, who is again starting first baseman now on a first place club, and missed an entire month of the year. So yeah, I think that Aguirre's first half has just been absolutely incredible. We should point out that we just sent this out on Twitter. There is a chance that Aguirre could be added to the National League All-Star squad. He is in the fan vote. So I would urge all Brewer fans who are listening to this to go and vote for Jesus Aguirre here in the next couple of days before the ballots close, to get him on the NL All-Star team, where he definitely deserves to be.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, now Brewer fans in general, even though we are a small market, we have a small fan base. They're a rabid fan base. I mean, we vote in ridiculous, we vote in droves just because we just care so much about this team, and we've done it before, voting in people, and I really see that. I think Aguirre is going to make it in again.
Yeah, I think that you're right, and a quick kudos to Brewer fans one more time for filling up Miller Park today. Today was a sellout in Milwaukee.
And that's awesome. It's so great just to see, so many great fans. Well, today was Robin Yount jersey giveaway day. So,
yep.
You know what? They should have just made that on I don't know, like a Tuesday or something like that, like a Tuesday day game or something, because they would have sold out no matter what with the Robin jersey. It's so great.
Yep. Yep, I agree. That looked pretty great. A lot of the fans were wearing that in the stands that you could see during the game, and they looked really sharp. I really wish I would have been able to get back to Milwaukee to be at the game today, but wasn't to be. But I do think that the Brewers marketing department does a great job in coming up with some giveaways, and yeah, it'd be really interesting to see if they did try more night game during the week giveaways. I think that might be interesting because Sundays are always a very popular day and have been for years at Miller Park. So you'd think that those games would fill up anyways.
Yeah, I think it's just getting those keepsakes into the hands of fans that can only come out on weekends. And, maybe if you have something great like a Robin Yount jersey that you're going to, well, if you're me, you'll probably wear it 3-4 times a week. Maybe it'll go on some more games.
Do you think that your girlfriend would call you out on that at some point, Scott?
I don't know. See, like I always tell people, like I always wear the same 2 pairs of jeans to work every day. Or like all the time at work, and like nobody ever calls me out on it. I just if anybody ever did, I'd just be like, oh no, I just buy the same brand of jeans, and I buy like 2 or 3 or 4 pairs. That's all there is to it. But I mean,
yeah, yeah, I don't know how many people are out there monitoring your gene usage, but yeah, that's a good point, Scott. And you're lucky you can wear jeans to work, but Craig, our executive producer, doesn't care too much, so it's all right.
Yeah, I don't think Craig will mind.
No. So in any event, I guess that we can hope that Aguilar gets in this week in the fan voting, and I do suspect that he probably will get a bunch of support. Were there any surprises on this year's NL or AL rosters, Scott?
Oh, that's a great question. And to be honest, I don't even know. Like, this just came out before we taped. And when I first saw it, I was scanning through it, and I was like, what? Hader's the only one that made it? And then they showed the reserves afterward, and I was like, oh, okay. Now we got Keenan Yelich, too. All right, 3 All-Stars. That's pretty good. I'd like to see Aguirre make it. You know who you really haven't talked about who probably deserves the nod is Jeremy Jeffers.
Yes, he does. Yes, he does. And Jeffers' ERA is actually lower than Josh Hader's, and I think that he doesn't get quite the national love as Hader gets. Number one, he's not a lefty, and number two, there still is that mystique, so to speak, of, the guys that throw. Well, I guess both of them throw really hard. But, Hader was closing games for a while this year when Knebel was injured. But Jeffers has also been around the league a little bit longer, so I think that there's always some interest in a quote-unquote rookie phenom like Josh Hader, who is new, to Major League Baseball. Obviously, he played, the big last season, but for only half the year. And Jeremy Jeffers has been around for quite a while. He was, a Brewers #1 draft pick back in 2006. And then we traded him to Kansas City. He's been reacquired 3 different times by the organization, but certainly has come into his own this year in the Milwaukee bullpen and clearly pitches differently in Milwaukee than he does in his other major league stops. He's been with the Blue Jays, he's been with the Royals, he's been with the Rangers, but he pitches differently in Milwaukee. And I think that any discussion of all-star relievers this year should at least include a discussion of Jeremy Jeffers. So certainly has been an all-star for the Brewers this year, if not for the National League, but very deserving. Would have been very deserving of the nod.
Yeah, and this is a guy that we followed. I'm sure that we have footage even. I got to see if I can get Craig to maybe we can post that footage up. I don't remember if we interviewed Jeffers. I feel like we did, but I know we have.
We definitely did. Yep, we definitely did. In West Virginia, of all places, I believe. I think we may have interviewed him twice during his minor league stints, once in West Virginia and once in, I want to say Huntsville, but for sure at least once. And he was one of the nicest guys that we ever dealt with, and he was a consummate professional even back then. He's faced a lot of professional and personal adversity, and he's continued to come through and survive and now thrive in the Milwaukee bullpen. And kudos to him, and kudos for David Stearns for picking him up, again, last season. He was at the trade deadline of all times that, we were probably focused on other names that were out there and the Sonny Grays of the world and the Quintanas of the world. But, Stearns picked up Jeremy Jeffers, who is not a sexy acquisition, but a guy who has been absolutely vital for us this season.
And I think if you would have asked at the beginning of the year, who's going to make more of an impact for this team, Jeremy Jeffers or Giovanni Gallardo, it'd be kind of a coin flip. I mean, I probably would have gone with Jeffers,
Right.
but not by much.
Right.
So
Right.
to see that,
Right.
it's crazy.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, absolutely a great point.
And then I just wanted to finally, now that we caught up, talk like really, really quickly about it. I finally got those facts for you. So at the time of our taping anyway, Jesus is batting .306. That's ninth in the NL. He has 22 homers. That's first. He has 63 RBIs. That's third in the NL. Slugging .633. That's the best in the NL. And he has an OPS of 1.001. That's the best in the NL. So
unbelievable. And this is a guy, Scott, that if you remember, there were a lot of Brewer fans that were, number one, questioning the Brewers keeping 4 first basemen on the opening day roster between Ryan Braun, Jesus Aguilar, Eric Thames, and G-Man Choi.
Yep.
And one of those guys has now been flipped for Brad Miller, who's been a help over the last month after we acquired him from Tampa Bay. And not only that, but a lot of people were saying that Aguilar, yeah, we like him. His dad was pretty good off the bench last year, but he's probably going to end up as one of the guys that gets sort of just crunched off this roster. He's clearly not as valuable a guy as some of these others that we're discussing. And, we're probably just going to have to end up DFAing him or cutting him at the end of spring training and not even getting anything in return for him. And here's a guy
trade him to the Yankees. I know that was being floated out there. I'm like,
yep. Oh. Yep. There was talk about, simply cutting him at the end of spring training if we couldn't find any takers because he didn't have any minor league options remaining. And here's a guy who, again, I think has got to be in the discussion if the season were to end today for National League MVP. And I see no reason at all why his success can't continue in the second half. He's not necessarily immune from slumps, but I do view him as being a guy who can sort of survive slumps better than other guys. At least that's what his track record would show to me. He doesn't get into prolonged funks at the plate, and he's leading this team offensively. And I think that he's a real, and I think you're the one that pointed this out on a previous podcast, Scott, but he seems like a real leader in the clubhouse. And I think that he's a guy that you can just tell the other guys on the team really like having him around. I know that the Brewers, after they gave us our press passes back, have talked to us. We have seen we've seen just the way that he interacts with his teammates, and he just seems to be a beloved figure in that clubhouse. I think it would have been a tremendous mistake to just let him go for nothing. So again, not to sound like a broken record, but kudos to David Stearns for having the foresight to keep a bat like Jesus Aguilar's on the team and in the system. And he has a great bat. He's not hurting us with the glove either. It's not like a David Ortiz situation where he's a total liability at first base. To me, he just screams, exactly. He's just a all-around consummate professional guy to have around this team. So, again, kudos to David Stearns and Craig Counsell for keeping him around.
Yeah, and let's not forget, like I had mentioned that, he wasn't even starting for the first, 5-6 weeks of the year, but he's still only at 245 at-bats. I mean, he's probably, 40 at-bats light on any other, quote, MVP contender right now. And to be that productive with that, like we're saying, I mean, not only should he be an all-star, which at the moment he is not. So Brewer fans, once again, please follow our links on Twitter and do whatever you got to do. I'm sure you'll find it somewhere on the internet. Please vote as much as you can forever. And not only that, but the guy's just, he's done so much in so limited at bats. He not only should be an all-star, he should have been starting. Nothing against Freddie Freeman. He's a great player. Sorry, Aguilar's been better. He should be starting, and he should really, like, if the season were to end today, he may very well be the MVP of this league. So and
to prove your point about just how surprising, I guess, his clutch performances have been this season, Freddie Freeman is the National League starter, and starters, as most fans know, are voted in by the fans on ballots, both online and in person at baseball stadiums. And Aguilar is not even the Brewers' representative at first base on the ballot. And we still have Eric Thames there, who also has been great this year. But here's this guy who's leading the National League in home runs, who's literally not even on the All-Star ballot this season because he started the year as a reserve for us. And just an incredible story. And if he keeps this up the second half, we're going to be talking about one of the most memorable seasons in Brewers history for a guy that's literally come from being a reserve / almost about to be cut player to National League MVP candidate. So just an incredible performance. It really is. And I hope fans vote. I hope fans vote like they're Chicago Democrats and vote multiple times. So continue to put the pressure on Major League Baseball to get Jesus Aguilar in the All-Star game. This is the week that our fans can actually speak for themselves and get out there and vote. So I'm hoping and cautiously optimistically expecting that Aguilar will be named an All-Star by midweek next week after the vote tallies are announced.
And we should point out too that unlike the thing that you mentioned, this is 100% legal to vote multiple times. So vote early, vote often, vote
early.
times.
Yeah, you can. Yep, vote early and vote often, and so it is actually legal. So yes, so absolutely 100%. Do you get any sense? I know that we talked to him earlier, but did you get any sense from our inside source of the Milwaukee Brewers ticket office, Tom Carter, our anonymous source, about what the Brewers are going to do to promote Aguilar here in the next few days?
So a couple of quick things. I know that I did actually get a private message from Tom Carter saying that he'd prefer if we kept him anonymous and try to eliminate his name, Tom Carter, from our podcast. And a lot of times too, I think that we might once or twice it's slipped up, and I think that he's pointed out now that it's becoming a little bit of a trend. And unfortunately, we tell the editors to bleep it out or whatever they got to do, but unfortunately, it's come to my attention that no one's actually editing this. So when we say that we're going to do it, I don't know. That's unique with the intern, and
yeah. Aren't these interns going through our college program? I mean, Craig gets paid big money to do this. I don't understand, but okay. Well, apologies then to our anonymous source, Tom Carter, for saying his name on the air again this week. And
yes, sorry, Tom.
Definitely. So, okay, going forward, we will refer to our anonymous source, Tom Carter, as either T. Carter or Tom C., but not Tom Carter. So, okay, fair enough. Good.
But to answer the question, I guess. Sorry, I got a little bit off track there. Tom's always been Tom Carter. He's been telling us not to say his name, so I had to bring it up anyway. So don't use Tom Carter, I guess, if we can help it. But no, I was going to say that they have some plans. The Brewers marketing team is always pretty creative, although if you look at Twitter, Jesus typically has a little bit of there's a little bit of sacrilege in a lot of the memes and stuff about him, but it's all in fun. Luckily, Christians, they're pretty laid back, easygoing folk. We enjoy it. It's funny. And I don't know that the Brewers are going to do that though, but maybe they've done it before, so you never know.
Scott, like a good man, I took communion today, but I also found those to be quite funny. So I think they were okay, at least from my perspective. We're all right. So yeah, I think we'll see an ad blitz from the Brewers here in the next couple of days to really promote his candidacy. And we'll do everything on our end too, Brewer fans who are listening to this. So again, we'll promote it probably another couple of times each in the next few days here on Twitter. And really try to get Hayes into the All-Star game. Scott, the Brewers, on a slightly different note, we do still have a week of games left before the All-Star break. The Brewers head to Miami and then Pittsburgh, and it's a lot of baseball here crammed in the next 7 days. The Brewers do have one makeup game in Pittsburgh, so to add to the Brewers' already tough schedule, there was a rainout in Pittsburgh just 3.5 weeks ago. That is going to be made up in a doubleheader against the Pirates on Saturday. What are your thoughts as we go into the next week facing the Marlins and the Pirates?
Well, first of all, we're looking at a bunch of road games. Second of all, we're looking at stadiums, particularly the Marlins, but also Pittsburgh, where it's a little bit tougher to hit a home run, a little harder than average. And this is still a team that relies a little bit more on the home run than maybe most. So that could make it a little bit tough. Having said that, I would really like 2 out of 3 from the Marlins, and I'm going to say 3 out of 5 from the Pirates, which would make that a very successful very successful road trip. So that's what I'm hoping for.
Yeah, why not? I should have pointed out before you made your predictions, the Brewers, yes, we're playing on the road, but the Brewers are 6 games over 500 on the road, 24-18 is where our road record currently stands. We're a very good road team. So I don't know if that's going to hold us back too much. I'm going to say, let's see, we've got what? I'm sorry, I should have been listening or have it up in front of me here. We've got, 3 against Miami?
3 against Miami and 5 in 4 days against Pittsburgh. So we're talking about 9 games in the next 8 days.
Boy, that's a lot. All right, let's go.
Wait, I did the math wrong there. Hang on, sorry.
No, I got you here. We got 8 games total. 8 games total. I'm gonna say we're gonna be 6-2. Let's go for 2 out of 3 against Miami. Yeah, and wow, 4 out of 5 against Pittsburgh. That's a lot. Yeah, let's think optimistically, right? This team has got some momentum. We just capped off a great homestand. We're kind of firing on all cylinders right now. Baseball's a funny game, and it can change overnight. So you never know how long that's going to last. But I'll say this team has a little momentum riding into the All-Star break, and we're going to finish 6-2 this week with our 3 against Miami and 5 against the division rival Pittsburgh Pirates. And we should also point out that the Marlins are, obviously struggling quite a bit this season. Very young team. They've got a few very talented players, but that organization has seen a lot of chaos surrounding it over the last few seasons, or really every season since 1993, with the exception of when they win the World Series unexpectedly. And then the Pirates, have been trending downwards this year. It seems like after a nice start in April to the season. So, let's think optimistically. I'll go 6-2 this week.
Yeah, and if you want to, okay, so I said 5-3? Okay. All right, yeah. Let's see what happens, I guess. And if you want to talk about momentum turning very, very quickly, you can look no further than the Braves that we just finished beating, because they had a 4-game lead on the Phillies, and they lost it in 4 days, maybe 5. So, yeah, that's all it takes sometimes.
Yeah, and that's true. And the Brewers have to remain on their toes. The Chicago Cubs, unfortunately, continue to play very, very well. So this week,
they've been getting really lucky, I think. But
that's yeah, something like that. The Cubs have the Brewers went 7-3 over the last 10 games, and the Cubs still managed to gain a game on us. So we are continuing to face great division opponents, and some would say that that's a bad thing. Some would say that pushes us to play our best all the time. So there is that as well. I certainly don't think that this organization is taking any opponent for granted or looking past any series, and I can't say that that was necessarily true for all teams in Brewers past. So let's hope that trend continues, and we have a good road trip here heading into the All-Star break and what's considered to be the midway point of the season. So on that note, Scott, do you have anything else to add? Otherwise, let's sign off on this one and wish our Brewer fans happy voting as they continue to support Jesus Iguiar's quest for the All-Star game this season.
Just gonna say real quick that your tweet out to get people to get out the vote for Jesus is already paying dividends. Gonna give a quick shout out to Chip Austin, who is at Chip Austin on Twitter. Make sure you follow him or whatever people do on Twitter. He actually let us know that he already has voted, followed our link and voted for Jesus. That is awesome. We just need about 100,000 more of you to do that, and we should probably be in decent shape. If you could vote maybe at least 20 times each, that would be awesome as well. You can find us at Brew Crew Review 1, the number 1, on Twitter. Ask us any questions that you want. You can follow us on, or just, watch our podcast, listen to it on YouTube, do whatever you want. It doesn't really matter. We do this for ourselves, but we also do it for you guys because we're all Brewer fans here. We're all just hanging out, and it's just such a great year.
Yeah, that's a great segue here, Scott. And absolutely. A shout out to Chip, who has been a longtime fan of the Brew Crew Review, going back to our days on West Dallas Public Access Television. So
awesome.
Cheers, and that's a true story. I have heard from him before. So kudos and thanks to Chip for supporting the Brewers and us all these years. So on that note, we will get to your fan emails in our next podcast, which will come out on Wednesday evening. So look for that. If you do have any questions, you can email the Brew Crew Review at Brew Crew Review Podcast with an S at gmail.com. It's Brew Crew Review Podcast at gmail.com. Follow us on Twitter at Brew Crew Review 1. Follow our tweets. We do try to tweet as much as possible. And I guess until that time, we hope to find our 2 lost co-hosts. And remember to stay classy, Brewer fans. Vote Jesus.
Get out the vote. Go Brewers. Go Jesus.
Go Brewers. Thanks, Scott. Talk to you soon.
All right. See you guys.
Brewers, come on!